Hello everyone, hope you are doing well. We've done a video for America, Russia and Germany, but a lot of the other nations don't have as many premiums that are on offer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do two videos. This one is going to have a look at Britain, Japan and France, and then the other video is going to have a look at China, Sweden, Italy and Israel together. So that's how we're setting it up. The first vehicle we're having a look at is the Challenger DS. This is very similar to the standard Challengers, the Mark II and III that you'll find in the tech tree. I really enjoy these vehicles. I think they're super fun. They have the 120mm L11A5, which used to have the best reload for a 120 in the game, but obviously times have changed. They still have a very good aced crew 5-second reload. The gun depression is great on these vehicles. They do have quite a hefty low glacis, which means that you do have to play them more reserved and hold down. The problem is that the turret can't really soak shots anymore. So people will just go straight through it. The vehicle does have access to the L26 round, which is good enough to be able to deal with most threats that you'll face. And once again, it's at that 10.3 BR. So the vast majority of machines that you will face will be either, standard 10.3s or at most 11.0s. There aren't many 11.3s in the game, so this one will be really nice. It also has good thermals and also access to smoke grenades, so it has all the good stuff. The other part is the transmission, which means that you can move around not fast, but also you can reverse pretty well too. So it's not the quickest vehicle out of all of the MBTs, but with that reverse gear, it means that you can get into position quick and then use it to push forward and push backwards. I really like the Challenger, as I said. I think it's a very undervalued vehicle. I wish I had a 50 cal to deal with air threats, and I wish that it had a slightly smaller lower glacis and also a smaller hit me spot in the middle, but that could be said about a lot of the vehicles at this BR too. I think it works very well alongside the Vickers, the Challenger, and all of the other part of the lineup at 10.3, including the Jaguar, which is very good. Then you have the F-4EJ for the British as well. This vehicle is at 11.3 in air and also 10.7 in ground. The reason for this is because it's way more of an air vehicle than it is a ground. It's very similar to the F-4S, which is in the American tech tree, meaning that it has access to some pretty powerful semi-active radar homing missiles. This one actually gets the Skyflash dogfight air-to-air missiles, which in this current meta are incredibly good. It also gets the rockets and the bombs if you want to just destroy bases, and on top of that also gets the AIM-9Gs. So it doesn't get the H's, which are just kind of the better version of the Gs, but the G will be fine, especially since your main weapon will be the Skyflash that you have here. It also does have an external 20, so you can decide not to take it, but if I was you, I would take it. And from its bombing part, it really is not as good as some of the other vehicles, but it still has that air-to-air component, which makes these things really fun. Also, the pilot in the front is a bit low poly right now, which is quite interesting to see, but it does have a pretty decent RWR, a lot better than some of the other vehicles you play around this BR, and the APG 59U is also very good in terms of getting those semi-actives on target. With the way that semi-actives are right now, you can actually play very aggressively in this thing with the Sky Flashes, and you can do a really good job with it. And just as kind of like a high-tier vehicle, we'll have to see how, if they change any of the radar alongside the semi-actives, but at this moment, it's very good and will get you a lot of points. Even if you aren't too good at dogfighting, you will still be able to hit bases, you're still able to drop bombs if you want to do that. The F-4EJ ADTW is the Japanese Phantom that is a premium. This one is slightly different compared to the other ones. The first part of it is it actually does have a gun, which is inside of the vehicle, so you don't have to worry about the external pod if you don't want it. It has basically the same engines as the other one, and also a lot of these similar features, but it has the APQ-120 radar, which is nowhere near as good as the one on the F-4S, and also on the F-4J. So that's the big difference between this and the other ones. It gets access to the AIM-7Es, so it doesn't get the dogfight ones, or it doesn't get the better ones, and also gets the AIM-9Ps. So its overall kind of air-to-air armament is not as good as what you'll see in the previous ones, but you can see that it can bring along a lot of rockets and a lot of bombs, which a lot of people have been using these Phantoms recently as basically bomb trucks or rocket trucks to be able to grind out the tech trees. And since Japan has actually got a lot of vehicles recently to actually, kind of grind out with them, then it's been really good for that. So if you want to use it like that, you can. It has plenty of countermeasures, just like the other Phantoms. It does burn hot, but that's okay. You can deal with that quite easily. But it just isn't anywhere near as good in the kind of air-to-air dogfighting setup or just air-to-air killing setup because of the worse radar and also the worse missiles. But from a bomb truck point of view, it works very well. The Type 16 FPS is one of those vehicles that I have thoroughly enjoyed playing the tech tree versions of. In the standard tech tree for Japan, you have the Type 16P and the Type 16. The only difference between these two and the FPS is the rounds that they use. That's literally it. Everything else is exactly the same. So they're all highly mobile. This one has Gen 2 thermals, maybe even Gen 3, and it has an LWSLR, which is super useful, especially when it comes to dealing with helicopters and other threats which are going after you. The round that this gets is the M735, which for a light tank, which is highly mobile, is completely fine. A lot of people don't like the M735. It did get nerfed more recently, but it is still a completely fine round with dealing with most targets that you will face. The only issue I have with this machine is its gun depression isn't very good, and it is quite a tall vehicle. So what ends up happening is you won't be able to hide as well as you would in other vehicles just because of its height. It does have a super bouncy upper glacis though, and also sometimes because of the kind of setup of the armor, sometimes the rounds will just kind of ricochet for no apparent reason. But the vehicle survivability isn't great. It's also something which is a big target for CAS, and even with the 50 cal, that won't save you. So survivability-wise, it's pretty bad. Mobility-wise, it's insanely good, and firepower-wise, it's also really good. It also has the standard reload for a 105, so you don't have any shenanigans with that. You'll be used to it, and you can run this with a bunch of other vehicles too, including stuff like the Type 16P standard, which is basically the same, and also the Type 93 if you want a little go-kart, plus also all of these vehicles, which help it out quite a lot. The Mirage F1C 200 is one of those vehicles that has a ridiculous armament, but is let down by very specific factors. But it is still very powerful. It's just, once again, since it's 11.3, there's certain 11.7s and 12.0s that are incredibly good at the moment. So this vehicle kind of gets outshone by those, but that could be said about all of these premiums at the end of the day. The vehicle has this Cyrano 4 radar, which is okay. I think there are better ones at this BR to be able to get your armaments on. And when it comes to the missiles, since this is more of an air-to-air vehicle, you get access to two Magic 2s, which are the Magics with IRCCM, which are very powerful at 11.3 and will do a lot of work. The other thing you also get is the 530Fs, which are the semi-active radar homing ones. I personally don't like these missiles. I know a lot of other people do, but I'm just not a fan of the 530F. I've never really been able to get it to work in a positive way. You do have the 530Es as well that you can bring, which is the big IR seeker ones. These ones are quite fun, but once again, they're probably not something that you want to use probably at this BR. They're very good on the Mirage 3s, which are nice, but at this BR, they might be a little bit slow and a little bit clumsy. You also have the 530 on the central pylon if you want, and also the 530 itself, which is another semi-active radar homing missile. So the Fs, you can definitely do decent work with this one, the 530 or the E. You get an extra kind of large missile to bring. You also do have bombs and rockets, but it's nowhere near as prolific in that regard as other vehicles. You should be basically running this thing as a air-to-air fighter, because one of the parts of this which is super nice is that it gets a metric ton of countermeasures. So even if you get in a negative position and you're not able to do the radar justice and you're not able to use your missiles that much, you aren't exactly crazy maneuverable, but you are able to survive a long time with the speed of this thing through its large engine, the Snecma, and also with the countermeasures. So you can extend fights for a long time if you need to, which is huge at this BR, especially if you get jumped on at the start. And that's what kind of, for me, works really well with the F1C. Now, as I said, a lot of these premiums, 11.3 and 11.0 right now, have a crippling problem, and it's the fact that 11.7 and 12.0 are really strong. But the Mirage F1C, with its armament and its speed, has a lot better chance at dealing with those vehicles than many of the others that you'll see around the place. As always, though, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.